Okay. All right. I think we're good to go. So Pat is going
Yep.
to get off for us today. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah. Hello, and thank you all for attending. I'm looking forward to introducing you to this great panel, Joe Naylor, John Tehranian, and Brian Riedel. Joe Naylor, President and CEO of ImageRights International, Inc. Joe Naylor is the President and CEO of ImageRights International, Inc., which he co-founded in 2008 to protect creative rights in the digital age. Through his leadership, ImageRights has become a trusted name for copyright protection among photographers, agencies, and publishers. Joe also serves as president of the Digital Media Licensing Association, known as DMLA, advocating for creator rights and ethical practices in media licensing, and is a member of the Library of Congress's Copyright Public Modernization Committee, which was established to enhance communication with stakeholders and create a public forum for addressing technology-related aspects of the U.S. Copyright Office's modernization efforts. He holds a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Texas at Austin and completed the program for leadership development at Harvard Business School. Next up, we have John Tehranian. John is a founding partner of One LLP, where his practice focuses on intellectual property and entertainment litigation and counseling. He has handled high-profile disputes and transactions involving numerous legends across various fields, including music, Bootsy Collins, Don Henley, B.B. King, Madonna, film, Louis Buñuel, Harold Lloyd, fashion, Jeremy Scott, theater, Stephen Sondheim, photography, David LaChapelle, Annie Leibovitz, literature, John Fante, Ernest Hemingway, Frank Herbert, Jules Verne, and athletics, Oscar de la Hoya, Tony Parker, Dean Potter. John has served as counsel in multiple published appellate decisions on copyright matters, including Matrix versus Live Journal, Direct Technologies versus Electronic Arts, and Marvix Photo versus Brand Technologies. He has been recognized by Variety as one of the world's top 50 entertainment lawyers and by Billboard magazine as a top music lawyer. John is also a Southern California super lawyer and a recipient of the Wiley W. Manuel Award for pro bono legal services from the State Bar of California. A graduate of Harvard University and Yale Law School, John is the author of numerous articles and 2 books. His work has been widely cited in congressional testimony, court decisions, and briefs before the U.S. Supreme Court in cases like Warhol versus Goldsmith, Google versus Oracle, Kurtzstang versus John Wiley and Sons, Golan versus Holder, and MGM versus Grokster. Currently, he is the Paul W. Wildman Chair and Professor of Law at Southwestern Law School and affiliated faculty at the Center for Security, Race, and Rights at Rutgers University. Next up, Brian Riedel. Brian grew up in a rural Pennsylvania farm community and developed a passion for design and photography early on. His interest in the creative arts deepened during his school years, eventually leading him to study at Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, where he honed his photography skills. Brian initially established a career in wedding and portrait photography before rediscovering his love for architectural and design photography. He regularly collaborates with designers, architects, and engineers to bring spaces to life through his lens. Brian is a member of Wonderful Machine, Photopolitic, and the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers, AIAP. He's also dedicated to the local arts community and is working on a long-term project to document historical landmarks in his area. Welcome, panelists. And with that, Joe will take it from here and tell you about ImageRights.
Great. Thanks, Pat. Really appreciate that. And thank you to yourself and to Jen and the AMA for providing this opportunity to speak with your community and many others. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And I'd also like to thank Brian and John. And John is, I've worked with him for 15 years now, and he is the best in the business. He not only has represented our clients at ImageRights, but also is our intellectual property counsel for ImageRights itself. And then Brian has been great working with him the past few months. He's really relatively new to the ImageRights family, but has really kind of jumped on the Capture One Pro plugin that we put out, and so I'm really excited for him to be here to kind of show you how it works. And just to give you a little idea of the flow here, I'm going to go a little bit of background on myself and ImageRights just to provide some context and kind of our approach to these issues around copyright registration and how it is so essential for protecting your work as an artist. Then Brian will do a demonstration of how he uses the Capture One plugin to register through ImageRights with the Copyright Office. Then I will take it back over and kind of give a little peek behind the curtains as to how we then complete that process of the registration submission on your behalf, and then a quick look at how that then makes it easier for our photographers to then be able to review their sightings, submit claims, and kind of facilitate the whole recovery aspect when it comes to copyright infringement claims. So Pat did a great job of going through a lot of my background, but I think the key thing I wanted to point out here is that ImageRights has provided me an opportunity to really understand the issues that artists face, and primarily photographers, but also digital artists, illustrators, and so on, and how difficult it can be, especially with such mass proliferation of images across the internet. And so kind of jumping into the fray and figuring out ways to kind of, if not solve the problem, at least mitigate, or at least arm you with some tools to be able to go out and protect yourselves to the best you can. And from the direct experience with ImageRights, I've been able to help out the industry in different ways. With the DMLA, we're strong advocates for rights holders, contributing amicus briefs and so on that really kind of back up artists. And then most recently, being selected to this committee to help be a voice for rights holders directly to the Copyright Office as they kind of modernize the back end. It's been a project that's years in the making, and we're starting to see some real progress now, and I'm proud to be a part of that. So at a high level, ImageRights is started with the initial intent to help photographers track where their images are being used online. And that evolved into, okay, so how can we help them once they find these uses? And we found out early on that it really takes a self-built platform designed expressly for the purpose of copyright protection to really be able to do this effectively and efficiently. And then the other cornerstone of our business is the team I have. It's an incredible team of folks that are client services managers, the assessment team that assesses the claims, and those that do some of the negotiations directly for license fees and so forth. And the relationships that we build with our clients is really that's the backbone of our business. So I show this photo because Hollywood is where it really all started for ImageRights. My co-founder and longtime partner, Ted Van Cleve, I had known for years in California, and he got a special permit back in '07 to go on site, which is really hard to get the permit, and do a shoot of the Hollywood sign. And in fact, if you look below the H there, you can see him and his crew down there. But he took these photos and then kind of did his spin on it. He's really a fine art photographer. And so he put out a series of Hollywood images where he kind of colorized these different angles of the sign. And as soon as he posted this, they went viral, basically. They were picked up everywhere. And that's what really triggered his call to me back in '07, asking, hey, is there a way to build an image search service? And we launched it. We immediately started finding uses all over the place of these images. And that's really where we started. It was just a group of photographers that we had connected with around the same time, and we started searching for them. But immediately, once we started finding these infringements, the photographers were frankly aghast at how pervasive it was, and so they were upset and wondering what they could do. And so I personally started calling these websites or companies operating the websites to try to negotiate fees. But alas, I learned very quickly that you don't have much leverage unless you've registered with the Copyright Office. And so I present you the humble copyright registration certificate. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, the most important thing you can do, and I'll say this over and over, to protect your work as an artist. And so those early trials, really led to the service that still exists today. And it's really, I kind of refer to it as the stool with three legs. It's the discovery, you upload your content, we search and report the uses. We register with the Copyright Office on your behalf, and we pursue the claims for you. And over the time of 15 years doing this, we've represented more than 30 million client images. We've registered almost 1.6 million images with the Copyright Office now, and then brought in over $40 million for our clients. So with that, Brian, I'd invite you to share your screen and show us how you use the Capture One Pro plugin to help you protect your work.
All right, Joe. Hey, thank you so much for the intro. Very honored and blessed to be here. AMA also equally honored to be in the company of so many awesome creatives. So just with this, and one other little caveat, this is my first one. So if I ramble a bit, or if I'm a little uneasy with my wording, just give me a break. But with that, let me share my screen. We're just going to go in here and show the whole thing. All right. So all right. So everybody in the group knows Capture One pretty much inside and out. Let me just back up a little bit. Pat gave me a really nice intro and read the bio well. What led me to ImageRights was the fact that I was at a convention conference for architectural photographers back in, I think it was back in June, if I'm not correct, Joe.
Yeah,
out in Columbus, Indiana, hosted by a really well-known architectural photographer, Mike Kelly. And Joe has happened to be presenting at this conference, almost this exact same presentation you're going to hear today. And prior to that meeting, this presentation that I witnessed, I had been curious about being able to copyright my photos for the sake of protecting my work, and also protecting the work that I do for my clients. While some of them are very simple, basic, just documenting interiors and exteriors of convenience stores, banks, so on and so forth. Nothing with a lot of glitz and glamour, but at the end of the day, they're still images that I create, so I want to protect them. And I also want to protect, my clients' work as well. So I was always looking for a way to do that. And going into the U.S. Copyright Office's website, it's kind of a tedious process to get in there, work your way around through the site, upload images, and go through that whole process. And to do that every time can be, it's time consuming, and two, it can be, a bit of a pain. So when I saw the presentation with Joe, and I'm glad I chose that presentation, it really opened my eyes, and I was really pretty much sold from the word go. So with that, I was kind of hooked, and we reached out, and we started having some early conversations. I logged in, got my account set up, which is another easy process to do, and then immediately started backlogging all of my files from. I just started with last year's work, so all of 2023 I just lumped into one asset folder and uploaded it to ImageRights. And within a couple of months, then after the process is completed, you have your letter from the U.S. Copyright Office on their website, so it's always at hand, always easily accessible and ready to go. And we'll see that in a second. But that's just a little bit of the backstory of how I got from where I was to sitting here in front of you guys today. So I'm going to take you through the process real quick, and it is really, really that quick to go from Capture One through the plugin and get it up to the ImageRights website for them to take over and kind of finish the process on their side. So you'll see Capture One, you'll see me work through the ImageRights website on my end, and then we'll turn it over to Joe again, and we'll watch him go through and do what he has to do. So I chose this project. This was shot in the middle of the summer. Just a bunch of exterior photos of a project that a local architectural firm asked me to capture for them. So what I've gone and done is pre-selected all the images that I want to send to ImageRights and to the U.S. Copyright Office. Some of the work is work that they selected. Some of it is additional photos that I'm going to use for my portfolio work as well. From there, we will then go to, let me get into. All right, so we're in Capture One, and we are going to go up to images or image on your main toolbar, and you're going to go down to publish. Now, once you're in here, you have two options to either upload selected images to ImageRights or prepare the U.S. Copyright Office registration with ImageRights. So we're going to take the second one and prepare. Now you're going to get a pop-up window that's going to give you a bunch of options. The image set will be uploaded directly from Capture One. I've in this option have selected to skip any duplicate file names, and it'll perform a conservative optical duplication search. This is from an older job that I had done previously a couple days ago. So we're just going to highlight that, and we're going to pop in the new name. And then it's going to ask you for information on format and sizing of the images, which just pretty much gives you JPEG. We're going to leave it 100% quality. It'll give you color grade options for Adobe RGB and sRGB. So we're going to stick with sRGB. And resolution, we don't need it crazy big because it's just going to go to their website and to the Copyright Office for documentation. So we're going to leave it at 300, and we're just going to leave the pixels as they are. We're going to respect the crop. So it allows you for adjustments if you want them to respect crops, ignore crops, So if you just want the whole image, you'll get the whole image. If you're just wanting, everything that was captured, then you can do that as well. You can also adjust for sharpening. And then you can select whatever metadata you want included. At this point, we're just going to select all. And I'm just going to deselect any annotations because there really wasn't any. So it'll capture the GPS coordinates, my copyright information, and we'll get rid of the ratings and color tags, and all other metadata related to the shoot itself. You can also, if you want to, include a watermark. So it can either be a text or an uploaded image file. If you have that as being what you've predetermined, I'm going to leave this at none, and then we're just going to hit publish. At that point, then it goes through the process. It's preparing all the images to go up. And depending on your internet speed, it can take a long time, or it can take just a few minutes. So at this point, it's telling me I have 2 minutes to upload all 25 images. I probably should have just picked a couple, but for the sake of the process, I want you to see, see the whole thing. So we're going to pop over and see if it's going to start populating into ImageRights. So we're here in ImageRights on my dashboard page. So you can see this is my account, my setup. You have a bunch of options up here on the top. This is your main dashboard. If you have any case files or anything like that, you have the account numbers for. You can populate in there, and you can do a quick access. If you want to test a website to see, whether you have images there, you're suspicious of something. And then from there, you can go into your images. So currently it's showing that I have 14 images in there right now. If I refresh, it'll probably show that I probably have a few more, 17. Yeah. So it'll take a few more minutes, another minute or so. And then you can go through and see any case sightings that you might have. Currently, I don't have any. I don't have any actions or claims. And then this is a really nice section too, where you can see your submitted registrations. Currently, I have 2 in the works. And then here's as I said before, your copyright registration certificate is right here, easily accessible, all in one area. And if you should have a problem, you can always just submit your claims right here. So we'll go back in and we'll see how we're doing. There we go. All right, so now that we have our image set uploaded, it automatically takes you to this title of work. Stayed the same as what I populated back in Capture One. Year of completion will be 2024. And you can select author created photographs. So you can photographs and 2D artwork. So if you have any graphics or anything like that, you can put that in there as well. And the system automatically populates my name, all of my contact and pertinent information. You can specify alternate contact info if somebody else needs permissions as well. And then alternate email or mailing address should you need to put that in as well. And I'll let Joe go through any or all of that. I've never had to use anything else down below here. So what we're going to do is you have 3 options. You can either delete if you mess something up and you want to re-download. So you can delete the registration. If you have more work you're going to enter later, you can save and come back to it, and it'll all save here in ImageRights. And then you can save and continue. So we're going to hit save and continue, and we're going to do. So since we're doing a grouping, We're going to do published photographs because this is already left and gone to the client. And some of these images are already on my website. So we are going to hit published photographs. At that point, it brings up all 25 images. If you have any extra information, you can upload via here. The nice thing about ImageRights in this part, which I don't think it's in the US Copyright Office's website, as far as doing an image prep for submission, you can go through and you can individually populate all of these images. You know, if it's a group image population and they're from different dates, different shoots, you can populate that time period in there, and then you can also select what country you're coming from. So we can go down all the way down to the United States, and we can populate that way, and then we can put in the time period. This is back in June. So we'll populate for July because I think I gave it to them in the middle somewhere. So we can do that. And we can also select approximate if we're not sure it's on or about this date. So that's nice. We can also go to batch and it'll select all the images. Since all of these are from the same shoot, we can go through and we can scroll down to the United States, select that. We'll click approximate, and then we'll just populate with the same time of July 17th. And then we will copy country to all selected images, and then copy date to all selected images. And if there's an image that you want to remove, say it's something that you selected in Capture One that you didn't mean to select, you can go ahead and hit remove, and it's gone. So once we get all of that squared away, then we come down to the bottom and we click on Save Image Data. You can also, at that point, if you don't want the USO registration, you can back out of it at this point as well. So we're going to go ahead and save image data. And then we're going to go through a pre-submission verification. And we may now submit. So I certify that I am the author, copyright claimant, or owner of executive rights, or the authorized agent to these images to the best of my knowledge. And we'll hit submit. So then it gives you this just verification, title of work, project of year completion, my information, contact information, and then all the images with the appropriate information tied to them. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to return to the list of registrations, and then it should show up. Studio KLP, Johnson College project, 25 images ready to go for Joe to take over. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Really appreciate you running through that. So I will show you where we take over real quick. So once Brian actually submits the registration, what happens on the back end is our software logs into the ECO site. This is the US Copyright Office site where you do the applications. It will automatically generate and populate a new application. Here are a couple that he did yesterday, just as a reference. And so, to this day, I personally still review these every day. We probably get about, anywhere from 5 to, depending on who's submitting, it could be 10 or 20, 30 a day. And this just makes it really easy to go through quickly. I can take a look at his registration. I can see the dates, file names, information from him. If it's a new client that's working with this, I will often go back and just check their application on our site to make sure, for example, the photos aren't photos of a bunch of pieces of art in a museum. Just to make sure it's stuff that can be registered without having to worry about limitations and claims or something like that if other works are contained within the image. But for the most part, once our clients have done this once or twice, they're able to submit these. And I mean, as you saw, in just a couple minutes, I can come in and review it literally in 10 seconds. If I do see something, I'll reach out to the photographer, just ask them. And if everything else looks good, you just add it to the cart. And here's this other one. And obviously I looked at these earlier, so I'm going a little faster than normal. I can add that to the cart. I left this one in here because I wanted you to see one of the other benefits of our software. Here we have one that's incomplete. And so if I go back and look here, I can see that this is the one that was incomplete. Go in and we have error checking with the software that can determine if there's some issue that the Copyright Office is not going to like. And so instead of wasting time and submitting something and then have the examiner have to communicate back with us to get it fixed, we kind of catch that up front. And here the issue was they just simply had one image file name that had characters that aren't supported by the Copyright Office. So we can just quickly rename them and then basically resubmit that application. But going back here, once we do that, we just simply check out. Okay, boom. Okay. And then we're done. And so what happens at that point is once we pay the fee for the filing, Copyright Office kicks back an email notification to our system. Our system then advances the state of the application here, and then that will trigger the automatic upload of the deposit copies, and then we're done. And so again, it's super easy. We make it super easy for you as a photographer, and then where it really pays big dividends is once you are, you can see here, let's see, this is actually where I wanted to go. So you see here, now this is a view of when you have sightings in your inbox. Because the registration is integrated with our platform at the image level, we know that when we find a sighting, our AI will actually evaluate the potential value of that sighting and then kind of rank it for your benefit so that you're looking at the ones that are kind of the most likely to lead to recovery. Instead of putting a bunch of sightings on Russian websites, we don't want you wasting your time there. We put it like this, and you can even see, this group of sites. And again, these aren't necessarily infringements. These are just sightings upon the photographer to determine whether they're licensed or not. But should they be unauthorized, here's a case where we got 3 registered timely and 1 just registered. Timeliness is unknown at that point. But, if you see 4 registered timely, then you're more likely to just go and get that done because that's a nice value claim. Here's a good example here. When you click to see the details of the sighting, here's your image. Here's the image that we found. We tell you when we found it, which is important for the statute of limitations clock. We tell you where, we provide you a link to where that image is stored on the server. You can see where the image appears on their website, which is right here. And then you can click through and get the full view of where they're using it to help sell Anderson windows. And so, this, if it wasn't licensed properly, they would just click on here and submit the claim. But if it did happen to be authorized, for example, they could just click and move it to the authorized use filter. Boom, and it takes like 2 seconds. And then all that Copyright Office registration information is included with the case that's created so that our assessment team on the back end very quickly and more accurately assess what to do with the claim, whether we should just try to negotiate something directly, or if it makes sense to go ahead and escalate it to a legal partner. So with that, I'll hand it over to John to kind of talk about, how he and his firm works with us, and then importantly, why all of this really matters with respect to copyright registration with the Copyright Office.
Thanks so much, Joe. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the AMA for sponsoring this webinar. I'm John Tehranian. I've had the pleasure of working with Joe and ImageRights probably about 15 years now, literally since they started out as a company. And, they're a premier company, or the premier company in this space. And it's a real pleasure to work with them. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about my background, how I came to this working on these issues, and then talk about the registration and why registration is so vital to the protection of any photographer or artist's rights. And then a little bit about the ImageRights enforcement process and how ImageRights works with its legal partners. So my firm, we started our firm in 2002. My partners and I were at one of the biggest law firms in the country. And we split off, and kind of in part because we wanted some autonomy, but also because we were directed by kind of our goals and our own mission, which was wanting to help creatives with the enforcement and protection of their intellectual property rights. And so since 2002, that's exactly what we've done, representing entertainers, musicians, photographers, writers, screenwriters, people in all facets of the creative industries in the protection of their intellectual property. And working with ImageRights has been a big part of that mission and work. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the registration process and why what Joe has kind of walked you through and what Brian has walked you through is so vital. As artists, artists work very, very hard on their work, but oftentimes they forget that last little bit, which is ensuring that their work is protected. And registration is absolutely vital to that process. So registration has several benefits. First of all, as many of you might know, copyright is not, you're not required to register to have a copyright in a work. In fact, copyright vests in an author the second they basically put pen to paper or they click the shutter on a camera. In other words, when it's fixed in a tangible medium, a copyright vests immediately. But the fact that you have a copyright is very different than the ability to enforce that copyright. And registration provides you several key benefits. First, it provides you a presumption that you are the owner of the work and that there is validity in your registration. Secondly, as a technical requirement, in order to actually go to court to ever enforce your copyright and sue someone for infringement, you actually must have a registration. And a few years ago, the Supreme Court actually heard a case that clarified this standard and said, not only do you not have to have a registration, it means that you don't have to just merely have a pending registration with the Copyright Office, but actually the Copyright Office needs to have issued the registration before you can ever sue in court, which means it's a good idea to register early and register often. But the most important reason by far to register your copyright is what it provides you in terms of remedies. And let me kind of give you an example. Many years ago, when I started my firm, I had a client come to me and she was a painter. And she had discovered one of her paintings was being featured on the cover of a major mail order catalog. And of course, this was a clear-cut infringement. They had not received a license from her. This was a commercial use, and it was a real affront to her to see her work being hawked in such a commercial context without permission or without payment. So I asked her, unfortunately, the very first question that I would ask any author that comes to me with a potential copyright infringement claim, which is, do you have a registration? And she said no. And unfortunately, we weren't able to handle her case on a contingency basis because of that. And the reason is simple. If you have a timely registration, which under the US code means that you registered your work before the infringement began or within 90 days of publication, you become eligible for two benefits, two key damage benefits. Number one, you become eligible for statutory damages. Second, you become eligible to receive your attorney's fees if you prevail in an infringement claim. Let me break those two down for you. Statutory damages are damages that juries can award to copyright holders when their works are infringed, regardless of any proof of actual damages or actual harm. And under the code, under the Copyright Act, statutory damages are up to $30,000 per infringed work, or up to $150,000 per infringed work if the infringement is willful. In other words, statutory damages are oftentimes a huge multiple of what your actual licensing fee would have been. And the point is, they're there as a punitive measure to deter people from actually infringing. Because if you get caught and you infringe and all you have to pay is the actual licensing fee, no one would ever pay to license a copyright. They'd wait, and in the unlikely event they get caught, they'd pay the amount that they would have had to pay at the outset. So statutory damages provide this huge hammer and this strong punitive component to prevent people from engaging in copyright infringement. Secondly, you get your attorney's fees. And I'm sure everybody on here knows attorneys are very expensive. Unfortunately, hourly rates are skyrocketing. And the average cost to take a copyright infringement claim to trial is somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million in attorney's fees. Most artists simply cannot afford this, which means that the only way they can take a case or bring a case for copyright infringement is on a contingency basis, where attorneys like myself working with ImageRights will take on a claim and not charge anything up front, and will only take a percentage if there is a recovery. On the other hand, if you don't have a registration, you can never get statutory damages. And worse yet, you can never get your attorney's fees, which means that the artist that came to me with the infringed painting, I had to break her the news that even if she prevailed, no matter how willful the infringement is, there was no punitive component to the damages she could get. She could never recover the attorney's fees that she would have to pay me. And at best, she would recover a few $1,000s. Well, you're not going to go to court, spend $500,000 to recover a few $1,000s. That's just not a worthwhile proposition. And so in situations like that, unfortunately, artists are left without a remedy. The solution is what ImageRights provides you, which is to register your works. It's that last mile in protecting your work and ensuring that you are in the best position and have the greatest amount of leverage in the unlikely but real event that people are infringing your work and you need to go out there and enforce it. So I encourage every artist to register their work, register it timely, work with entities like ImageRights to do so, because that makes all the difference if you ever have to enforce your rights and come and talk to an attorney. Now, in terms of the process, or let me give you an example of how this infringement, or how this plays out in the real world with registrations. So a few months ago, my firm, I went to trial. We took a case for ImageRights. One of our clients, one of ImageRights' clients, Scott Hargis, is an architectural photographer, very successful architectural photographer. And he found that a senior living community, one of the largest senior living communities in the United States, was using his images to advertise various senior living communities they operated and managed. We attempted to settle the case without going to litigation, but unfortunately, the other side was not willing to settle. So we ended up having to file suit. And in most cases, you end up actually getting a settlement somewhere during the piece of litigation. But in this case, the other side had no interest in settling whatsoever. They believed even though they had clearly infringed, they believed they should not be subject to any kind of damages for it. And so we ended up taking the case to trial in December of last year. The case was a one-week trial in front of a jury. And in the end, we ended up with a very strong verdict for our client. Let me explain, though, how the verdict played out. Our client had claimed that 42 of his images were being infringed by the defendant, this senior living community. And there were arguments as to what the actual licensing value of those photos were. There were arguments that the actual licensing value of those photos was somewhere around $550 a shot. In other words, if the community had actually tried to obtain the permission ahead of time, they could have arguably gotten it for $550 a shot. So you would imagine, okay, 42 times 550, that's not a lot of money. That's probably not worth a lawsuit. But the defendant had acted willfully. They not only infringed the work when they were a mega corporation with an army of lawyers who knew better, but they had re-infringed the work after saying they had taken it down. And we had a very strong willfulness claim. But above all, our client had worked with ImageRights. He had registered all 42 of those images, which means under the law, he's not just entitled to the actual damages, which may have been a few hundred or a few $1,000s, but instead he can recover up to $150,000 per infringement. And that's what we asked the jury to do, to send a message to all companies that they must respect the rights of artists. And in fact, the jury did send a message. The jury ended up awarding what is the largest maximum statutory damages verdict in US history for photography infringement. We received a verdict of $6.3 million for our client for the infringement of 42 works. And the difference in that case was that he had registrations and he followed this regime. So let me just give just a brief note also on how the process works in terms of enforcement of rights. Obviously, there's the registration component working with ImageRights, but ImageRights also finds sightings, and you, as an artist or representative of artists, will identify infringements that are, not licensed, uses that are not licensed. Well, ImageRights will try to settle those cases, but if they run into a brick wall, or for whatever reason they're not receiving a response, they'll hand those cases off to legal partners like myself at One LLP. We'll evaluate the cases, take them on a contingency basis, and pursue the claims. If we go to trial, we go to trial. If we have to get a judgment, we'll get a judgment. Most cases settle. And a part of our job is we carefully evaluate the cases, evaluating collectability, jurisdiction, the amount of damages we can get, and also potential defenses that the defendant might have, because we're very careful. We don't want our clients getting into cases that don't make sense, especially if, for example, there's a strong fair use defense, and that might expose our client to losing the case. We don't want to do those. So we carefully evaluate the cases, we pursue them, and in the end, whatever collection we get, that's percentage of it goes to us, and the rest goes to ImageRights and the client. And that's how the legal enforcement system works. So I'm looking forward to answering any questions you have, and I'll turn it back to Joe.
That was fantastic. I'm just curious, what other factors in the Hargis case positioned him to have a successful outcome like that? Beyond just registration, how about language in his invoices or contracts that other photographers on this webinar could benefit from hearing about?
Yeah, one of the clear things that Hargis had done, our client had done, is on his invoices and in his contracts, he had made it very clear that when he issued a license, the license was non-transferable and non-assignable, which means no one else could use it. And in this case, one of the claims the defendant made was, oh, we got permission from this other entity. Well, we clearly defeated that very clearly, because there was no kind of argument about he said, she said, or oral contracts. It was in print, in writing, that there was no assignment available of the license, and that they should have done their due diligence and known that. So that was a huge factor. And the other factor was the willfulness, the fact that we sent notice, that they took a long time before they removed the images. And then we stayed vigilant. Hargis, ImageRights, and ourselves at One LLP made sure to monitor their website to see if they made reuse of the photos or infringed new photos of his. And when we found out that they had, we knew that we had a very, very strong case for willfulness, which gets you those enhanced damages and justified the $150,000 per image and got us the $6.3 million verdict.
Yeah, I also think it's worth pointing out that when we initially were pursuing them, we reached out directly. We didn't escalate this case right away. And initially there were 16 claims involved. And after initially responding to us, they kind of gave us, the usual, and they said, oh yeah, we'll take them down and so forth. And at some point, I believe they took some of them down, but they were trying to argue, oh, well, we're done. We're like, no, you still owe us the fee. And we were seeking only $31,000 at the time. So this could have been taken care of pretty quickly and for a lot less money. But then they ghosted us, and after trying to get them back in contact for several months, that's when we escalated to John. And then as things developed, they ended up not only continuing their lack of cooperation, but they actually posted more images, which bumped the claim count up to 42 ultimately. So yeah, it was kind of a textbook case of how we operate, because we worked with Scott to register the photos, found these claims, tried to pursue it directly, tried to avoid litigation, and only when forced did we turn to legal partner and John specifically to do what we needed to do. But it goes a long way to showing that we're not just trying to pick up the low-hanging fruit. You know, when we take on a case, we do everything we can to resolve it to your benefit. With that, Jen, do we have any questions or?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Pat. When you
Oh,
mentioned
great. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, do you want to read it or?
Yeah, when you mention timely registration with the US Copyright Office, what exactly does that entail? I've advised my artists to register their images retroactively, starting with 2024 and working backward. Would, for example, an image shot in 2012 but registered in 2024 hold less value than an image shot and registered in 2024?
Okay, so great question. Timely registration means one of two things. In order to recover statutory damages and fees, you need to be timely registered. And timely means either one, you registered before the infringement began, or two, you registered within 3 months of first publication. Okay, now in your example, you're talking about some older works. If you haven't registered older works, you absolutely should register them right now. There is huge value in that. But be aware that if someone started infringing your older works before you registered them, you can't get statutory damages or fees for that infringement. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't register them, because if you register them now, that means if someone starts infringing tomorrow, that infringement will be subject to statutory damages and fees, as will all future new infringements. So the earlier you register, even if you haven't with your old works in the past, the earlier you register now, the more of these infringements you can capture as eligible for statutory damages and fees. So that's very important.
Yeah, and Pat, just to continue on that, we've worked with many photographers whose archives go back decades. And so that is absolutely like question one for them. It's like, what's the point of registering if these were all from a long time ago? And my point is, hey, if they're out there, they're going to continue to be infringed. And you know, it can be cost prohibitive. You don't want to just blanketly register everything. You do want to put some thought into it. But we generally advise, let's look at what's out there. What's your most iconic photographs? What's been distributed the widest, the longest? You know, what are we going to find? And let's start there. And then as we're able to resolve claims for them going forward, then that brings in revenue for them, and they can continue to invest in registering more of their archive.
No, thanks. Really helpful.
Anyone else have any questions? Quiet.
Kids.
That's it.
Well, I will say that last year we did a webinar and we demoed our Adobe Lightroom plugin for registration. And the feedback I got from Jen and others at the AMA was that, hey, we all use Capture One Pro. And so we kind of took it upon ourselves to figure out how to go and built a plugin for this application. And I'm really happy that, you know, one, we got the feedback because I personally wasn't aware of how broadly used Capture One Pro is. But to be able to put it together and launch it within a year and then have, you know, Brian and others already benefiting from it, it's quite rewarding. So thank you, Jen and Pat and the rest of the AMA community for guiding us on that.
Yeah, of course. We're so excited for you.
Yeah.
There were two other questions. Is the plugin only for Lightroom members, and how do I sign up?
So the plugins are for users of ImageRights. So you need to have an ImageRights account. And then whether you use Lightroom or Capture One, you download the appropriate plugin. and then you can do what Brian demoed and register from that. So yeah, you do need an ImageRights account.
Is Natalia still in this group, and can she put a way for people to sign up in the chat as well?
Great idea.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I can even help with that, Natalia.
Sure. And someone else said, can you talk about the pricing for ImageRights?
Yeah, I will just a second here.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, so can you see that? If you
Yeah.
scan the QR code,
Yep.
well, actually, that'll take you to survey, but I'm pretty sure there's a link to sign up for ImageRights too. And if all that fails, just go to imagerights.com. As far as pricing, so there's actually no cost to sign up. So the way it goes, like not anybody can just go to the website and sign up. So you inquire, we speak with you, we kind of get a feel for what you do, who you license through, what type of work. Talk to you about registration. We obviously are big backers of registration. So whether you do it already or are willing to start doing it going forward through us, and it's kind of a requirement. So once you register, there's no cost. You know, we start searching to do the registrations. It's just the ECO filing fee plus $34 for administrative fee for kind of doing all the processing and then mailing you back the issued certificates. Where the model kicks in is once you submit a claim, if we recommend to pursue it and you then we'll pursue that case. If it's something that we settle directly, then you receive 50% of the gross settlement. If it's something that we have to run through a legal partner, we pre-negotiated for the most part contingency terms, certainly in the US. Certain countries don't allow it, like the UK and Australia and so forth. But they ultimately settle a claim or we win an award. I should also mention this, any hard costs or out-of-pocket costs like court filing fees or anything like that, service of process, we'll front that for you. Or our legal partner will kind of delay billing of that. So you don't have to go out of pocket. So if there's 20 different infringement claims, we don't want you not pursuing them because you're concerned about out-of-pocket costs. And then when it's ultimately settled, legal partner, if there's one involved, will retain their fee, their contingency fee. Then we'll back out any hard costs that we fronted. And then the rest is what we would then split 50-50 with you.
Great.
And then one more comment on that. Should for some reason we don't actually settle it or collect, we don't pass the billing on to you for those hard costs. We just go ahead and bear that cost for you.
Great. Thanks for explaining. Last question. How do the final images need to be to register? For example, I usually work in Photoshop after Capture One.
So how do they need what
is it
format?
so their final image isn't finished when it's in Capture One because they then, I'm assuming, will export a file and then work on it additionally in Photoshop. So the Photoshop file then becomes the actual final with any revisions.
Yeah, John almost might want to speak to this, but if you registered those works initially, you were not required. You should probably say this since you're the attorney, but you're not necessarily required to register a derivative work. But it might behoove you to do so depending on the extent of the modifications to that original image. So
yeah,
John,
really, you want to register the work that you're ultimately going to be putting out into the public, assuming you are. So if that, if you're doing multiple iterations of an original work and doing various Photoshop alterations to them, then registering the original work may be sufficient. But the better practice is if you're putting out that Photoshop version only out into the world, then you want to actually register the Photoshop work. But I think as to the technical aspect of that, I'm not sure what the answer is in terms of, do you re-import it back into Capture One? I think that may be after you Photoshopped it.
Right, which I don't think, I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but that would not be the common next step, I think, for folks.
So then what you would probably do in that situation is just upload the finished images directly to your ImageRights account and initiate the registration from within your browser.
Right.
Yeah, so you wouldn't do it through Capture One then in that case.
You know, just
Right.
do it directly from your account.
Got it. Great.
Yeah, I've done it both ways where I do it directly from my hard drive up into the web browser for ImageRights, and I've also obviously done it through Capture One itself, but kind of back channeling through, going from Capture One to Photoshop. Yeah, I would just do it right from the hard drive right up to the browser,
Mhm.
and that's equally as easy.
The last question that just came up here is, does the format matter? Can it be a low-res JPEG?
So it can be a low-res JPEG for the purposes of registration. I will say that there's also the search component. So the higher the resolution, the more accurate the search results are. And so if it's just a fuzzy little thumbnail, we're not going to pick up a lot of matches. But if it's a higher res, then that just serves you better on the recovery side.
Great. Okay, great. Any more questions? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. Thank you guys so much. How informative. And thank you for sharing, Brian, how the Capture One plugin works.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for joining, and big thanks to you, Brian and John, and of course Jen and Pat also for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, guys. I learn something new every time. It's so, so useful.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.